Hello and welcome to another macro video. We're looking at speeding up our work today as editors and in particular at one-touch macros. But a bit of revision before we start of ways in which we can speed ourselves up as editors. Three main ways. The first is to analyze the document before we start. So before we actually start reading, we can be forewarned of the likely inconsistencies and save time in the long run. Second main way of speeding ourselves up is to use global scripted find and replace, in other words Fredit, and for me that's the biggest single time saver of all. It's especially important on books because as you go through chapter by chapter, Frediting each one and then editing it, we can improve on our Fredit script, Fredit list, make it more accurate, add in features that we hadn't thought of when we first started. But today's is the third of these, which is speeding up line editing. So we're actually reading sentence by sentence and we want to speed things up. So what we have to do is to look at, in inverted commas, the way we work and see what we do most often, what changes do we make most often, and if we can put those changes, each one, into a one-touch macro, then a small amount of time saving on one action is then multiplied by the fact that we do it often. And also by doing it with a macro, we are accurate in that we don't mistype something as we're trying to make the change while we're concentrating on the meaning of the sentence. And what I've tried to do with a lot of the macros is to build in a number of different functions into the one macro so that the one keystroke will access different actions according to the context of where you run the macro. So in the one-touch macros we're looking at today, most of them are the existing ones, but there is one new one. And the biggest single time saver of one-touch macros is multi-switch, because it can be tailored to your own use. Multi-switch itself doesn't have any changes that it makes. You give it a list of the changes you want it to make. So if you click in any given word, like which, then you run multi-switch and it will look through the list and it will see that you want which to be changed to that, and obviously vice versa. There's another entry which changes it the opposite way, or it might be for verb changing, or I use it for abbreviation expansion. So if I want citations, I only need to just write CI and then it will expand it. I won't go into any more detail on that, but there are videos available and you can Google to find those multi-switch macro. Okay, so two of the most commonly used, I would guess, one-touch macros are swap characters and swap words. So if two characters are the wrong way around, then you will run the swap characters macro and put them the right round way. Obviously that's wrong, so swap words, put those the right way round. Then the next one, which people are perhaps less familiar with, is the spelling suggest. And again, changing spellings, correcting the spelling is something, or even checking the spelling, this same macro does both, is something you do often. So behavior, we're a UK document, okay, so if we run the spelling suggest, it bongs at us twice to say that is an incorrect spelling and it corrects it. Can you spell supersede? Yeah, okay, so if we come to supersede with an S and you think, oh, I'm not sure, then you run spelling suggest and it bongs at you once to say yes, that's a correct spelling. Now verb changer, again, something I found myself doing often was changing the participle. So if it change to changing, so if I run verb changer, so I click in the word change, it changes it to changing, and it goes the other way. So if I click in changing, and run it, it puts it to change, pan to panning. Now in that case it bleeped at me because it did a spell check after it had changed the word. In other words, if I undo that, it had actually changed it to painting. Then it did a spell check and said no, that's wrong. So it did a spell correction. Trip, that's presumably going to be the same. So again, that's the same. And the other function that it has, if we again, something I found myself doing often, to change for changing. So if you click in the first word, to as opposed to change, and then run the changer, it changes it to for changing. So that's another time saver. Changing numbers, quite often you find yourself with a list where the numbers are wrong, or in this case dates that are wrong, need changing. That should have been the 17th, that should have been the 18th, that should have been the 20th. Oh no, sorry, the 19th. So you've got one press for increment and one press for decrement. So that's another useful one. When it comes to punctuation, what I've had for a number of years is individual macros to change a break in a sentence and to put the appropriate punctuation in. So we've got that break there. We decide it should be a sentence, so I run the full point macro. Not only does it change the punctuation, it also changes the case of the next letter. So if it was a comma, we use the comma macro, or the dash macro. Obviously I was using a US document last time, and so I got the dash there. Okay, but what I decided recently was that there were, first of all, there were too many macros, but also I can't use it for this one, because if I use comma there, then I didn't want to change the case of the next letter. So I revamped it and asked myself again the same question: what do I do most often? And I generated a macro called punctuation swap, which does 3 different swaps, or in a sense it's 6, because it swaps back and forth, because this is what I do most commonly: full stop to comma, semicolon to colon, and single quote to double quote. So those are things, those are punctuation changes that I do most frequently. So let's see how we get on with this. So the way this one works is that you click in front of the punctuation mark as you did before, and it changes the punctuation, and what it's done now is it's held the selection, because if I now decide I've done my job, then that's fine, and it won't change the case of the next word. But if I've got this one, then I run punctuation swap, changes the punctuation, and I run it again, and because something is selected, it knows that what I mean is, and now go on and make the case change. So if I do comma with the same macro, punctuation swap, and there change the other one. So that's the idea. And then of course the same pair, the same macro does a different pair. It does the colon or the semicolon. Okay, and if we're having to do quotations, then we use the same macro. If you start in front of that first quotation mark, then we run swap. Oh, didn't want to change that. Go back. Okay, so we go to here, punctuation swap, that one, and it actually skips past the apostrophe there, because, well, it would do if I changed the macro version on this computer, whereas I didn't. And I'm not going to re-record the whole thing. The new version will skip past the apostrophe, and it will go straight to that one, and that one, and that one. He laughed. Oh dear. I've started this video several times and kept making mistakes all the way through. So that's it. I'm not going to go back and re-record the whole thing. So I hope that's helpful, and if you have any problems or suggestions, do get in touch. Okay, bye for now.